On here? Can you hear? Good. Perfect. What a wild event this is. I think I need to firstly just say thank you for having me and being able to talk about the Toblerone brand. I think it's something that I'm really passionate about. I head up marketing for the UK for Mondelez, so we have this collection of amazing brands, and to be able to come and speak to people like this and represent the team's work in this sort of forum and discuss it is a real privilege, actually. But I actually wanted to talk just in terms of the overall theme and narrative of this of the overall conference. And the Riders of the Storm, I think, is something incredibly relevant for where we are today in marketing. If you look at the world that we exist in, incredibly entrenched, divided. There's so much space given to those entrenched opinions as well, that it's a really difficult space for brands to operate in. There is always going to be challenges in terms of when do we find a space to comment, when do we not? What's the right thing to do from a brand perspective? And it's genuinely a tightrope that we need to walk through. But the one thing that I love about the work that we do is the question that we're trying to answer as a marketing team and anyone who's in charge of brands, agencies, custodians as we are. We're answering the same question that's been true forever and a day. We're asking in terms of how do we communicate with consumers in a more relevant way, in a more meaningful way, to drive that action to engage with our brands on a more regular basis. And that for me is, whilst the context that we're going to operate in is going to change, and you look at the world's a crazy place, as I've said, but that question is the thing that's going to keep you consistent all the way through. I think that's something really, really important to remember. And something that, if I look at where we've been on Toblerone, if I had the time and I had the capability, I'd do some sort of straw poll across the audience at this point in time and go, if I ask you what Toblerone means for you, no doubt I'll see some of these things that come up here. Most likely you'll talk to me about it as being a brand that you recognize from duty free when you've gone away on holiday. You'll see some of the things where we've heavily discounted and been present in areas to drive short-term activation, short-term growth, and commoditize the brand. And I think this is one of the important things that we need to do as brand custodians, especially if we're going to navigate through really difficult spaces, is we need to confront the reality of where we are today as a brand and where we've been. And only until you've done that can you actually adapt for the future and move forward and deliver those positive outcomes that we talked about. But I think some of these things, they're actually quite uncomfortable to present on a stage like this. Anyone that will remember the famous Toblerone toast rack, as we call it in the business, where we made decisions that weren't market orientated. They weren't down to what's right from a consumer point of view. We were looking at our business in a completely wrong way round, and we weren't elevating the consumer to the front of everything that we do. So this is the point where we started from. This is our reality, and this is what we were working from. But the good thing about this brand is, if you look at it, how unique it is. When you look at it from a differentiation perspective, there is literally nothing like it in the chocolate market. It's something that we know has such fantastic credentials. And actually, it's just about celebrating those and elevating those versus the context of what it operates in. So we took a step back, probably longer than a couple of years ago. When you think about some of those decisions that we made, we had to unwind and we had to do the right thing to allow us to take the next step as a brand moving forward. But you look at this, and you look at this as an icon, and I use that word deliberately, an icon within our business, and go, the potential for this brand is phenomenal. And that's something that we've really been accelerating behind over the last couple of years. And the one thing I always talk about when I speak to my team and marketeers in general is, you need to go back to where you came from and look back in terms of the DNA of what makes your brand you. Why do you exist in this world? I know the guys did a brilliant talk on Cadbury earlier on and talking about the foundations of George Cadbury and everything we've done in that space. But I think Toblerone is quite a similar sort of story as well. For those that won't know, this is Hair Tobler on the left-hand side here. In 1908, Tobler recognized that the world is just commoditized. The world is standardized. As you look at the mass production of chocolate that was playing out in the market, it was being democratized slowly but surely. And he identified straight away, I need to be different in this space. To cut through, I need to do something different. And that's something that's played out in the brand all the way back from 1908. Actually, if you look at the products, you look at the packaging, even when you look at some of the beautiful print from the early 1920s, there's a real sort of consistency in everything that's been great about this brand for so long. And that's where we went back to. We went back to understanding what makes Toblerone so brilliant. Why do people are so engaged with it? When we do things in the wrong way as a brand and you get so much active participation from consumers, it's because people care. People care about these brands in terms of the things that we do with them. So taking that responsibility really seriously is something that we need to do. And this you can see, I sort of point out to some of the advertising that we've had in the past. And which, let's be honest, we've been very dark as a brand over the last 10, 20 years. We haven't communicated. Our saliency is where we have a real problem. But you can see straight away we're trying to be different. We're trying to disrupt the category, even 20 years ago. And I point to the sort of the credentials that you would normally see within mass premium chocolate. And there's nothing wrong with this at all. I've genuinely put this up here, not to be disparaging of competitive set or anything like that. But this is what the cues of the category are. Everyone can picture a young lady enjoying that indulgent moment on a sofa at the end of a day on their own. It's very traditional. It's very, in terms of stereotypical in many ways, actually. And if we were to do that job as a brand, we wouldn't be doing a job for Toblerone. We'd be doing a job for the category. No one would remember us as a consequence of that work. Only people would remember what already plays out in the category. So the one thing that we needed to do is go back to, what do we stand for? Why do we exist? Which is where we all started from in this. And then the other thing that, very interestingly, when I had to write my little brief and blurb for the way to approach riding the storm, I went back to listening to consumers, understanding what consumers think and say and do, and what tensions you're looking to solve from. And at that point, you can know the direction that you're going on, alongside having such strength in your brand foundations. So straight away we did that. We looked back from a consumer point of view. What we didn't do is just do it from a basic demographic split. I see a lot of times as marketeers, we talk about we need to engage with Gen Z, we need to engage with millennials, a younger audience. Actually look deeper than that. Look really deeper than that, and look in terms of attitudes and behaviors. And then try and look at the cohorts that you're trying to engage with as a consequence there. But it was very clear in terms of the jobs that we had to do on the brand. If you look at it in terms of bringing that brand DNA, and as I've talked about, what makes us so unique, the originality, breaking out of the norms within the category, but doing that in a really relevant way within culture today. And that's the big job that we have to do. So whilst the question, and that we'll always be asking as marketeers, will be consistent in terms of how do we engage with consumers, how you show up and how you do that in a different way that is culturally relevant to the scenario and situation. That's what makes the difference for brands, and that's where we should be spending all of our time thinking about in terms of how do we engage in that space. And then I look at it in terms of the credentials of the product. It's a beautiful product. It is. It's something instantly recognizable as you see it. And actually, even as I've just been walking around the event, the fact that whenever I talk about Toblerone, you have this conversation about how you eat it. And actually, how do you actually snap it? And straight away, you're into this debate and into this conversation, which again reinforces what a privilege it is to be in terms of working on these brands. And then actually where we need to step change as well is move into this space as a progressive premium brand. We need to, in terms of elevate those cues that we've been trying to build over time in premium gifting, because that's ultimately where we're going to grow from in the future. And this is where I think the other thing that I would say is this is our new creative platform. And the one thing I would say is that we haven't got this right straight away. And again, in terms of riding the storm, I think there is a real thing around being humble, being inquisitive, iterating as you go through and making sure you get this absolutely spot on. And only at that point do you really move on. And there's a lot of conversations where we've evolved. But what I absolutely love about this in terms of Never Square as a platform is this is going to guide every single thing that we do. And I'll talk in terms of the executions as we get onto them. And we'll talk about how this shows up in products, in innovation, in communications, and in-store experience. But it is the basis of everything that we do. And having such foundations gives you strength, because then you know how far you can push the boundaries on things without breaking away from the origins of your brand and what makes you so unique in the first place. And the other thing I love about Never Square is there's both a literal and a metaphorical meaning to this. Of course, literal in that we are never square. We are triangular by definition in this at this point in time. But the metaphorical view of like, I don't want to be seen as square. I want to break out of the mold. I want to be different. And I think that becomes a really powerful space for us to play into when you think about engaging with a broader audience and a broader consumer basis for us. But as we go through, hopefully you'll see some of the work that we've done and how we bring this to life in terms of our brand architecture, the foundations of our products and our packaging here. But the one thing as well is there's a real thing around consistency. So we know we have real strength around some of the assets that we have on Toblerone. If you look at it in terms of the distinctive assets that we have, and we're trying to continuously reinforce as we build this brand out, but bringing that unique edge into it. We're bringing in terms of personalization into our packaging in a way that's not been done before on Toblerone as well. And then that brings on to the portfolio. And again, like the reason why we take this approach is so we do this across everything, and it even comes down to the products that we sell. So as I talked earlier on in terms of the role we do in terms of taking products out of our portfolio and saying, no, we're not going to do that, because that doesn't ladder up to what we want to achieve as a brand. And that means a real sort of reorientation around our core portfolio and how we're going to focus our communications around that. And then we've also taken risks. I think as I talk about the question around how we engage with consumers, but we still need to push the boundaries. And that's something, as I look at the Love Insurance campaign that we ran in Valentine's Day this year, it was a bit of a soft launch, and we're moving at pace on this, but we're trying to engage in a way, in a message that if you look at Valentine's Day, it's all about those traditional relationships, people that you've been with for a number of years, you have an established relationship, you're married, those sort of things. Actually, Valentine's Day, what about those early stages of the relationship? When you're in the first couple of weeks and you actually don't know what's going on. And we reference it in terms of this situationship. And actually, how do we bring this occasion and this event in a really relevant way to that cohort? And whilst I'll admit, actually, there's some things as we look through some of the executions that I don't think we nailed in the first iteration of what we did. Actually, you can see the direction that we're trying to go in. And we're trying to play a role in a way that is unique to Toblerone, but equally is really disruptive in the environment and the marketplace that's playing out. And we'll see that again with some of the stuff that we've done around Father's Day, and celebrating the fact that you don't just need to be a father of a traditional family. Actually, as a father of a pet or a plant or whatever it might be, it's unique to you, and therefore is unique to Toblerone as well. So exploring those spaces that we can start to play in. Let me just go one as well. But I think one of the things that I was going to talk about at the front end is how we show up on shelf as well. If you go into a supermarket 12 months ago, you'd have seen us at the bottom shelf. You'd have seen us in terms of unloved. You would have seen us in terms of not really standing for anything in that space, not really stepping out from that fixture. And actually, this is where we win. This is where we need to engage as shoppers are engaging, whether that's physically in store and also in a digital universe as well. We need to do things differently there. And that's one thing in terms of our commitment to that investment over time is how do we show up in every single touch point that we're going to be seen by consumers along that journey. And I think I've been in this role for a few years, and the challenge is, and I see it with all marketeers actually, is you get bored with stuff. Actually, when we go after really, really great work, it's because we built stuff over time consistently. And if that's another real lesson that I've got in terms of how do you navigate such challenging environments, is you've got to keep being patient with it. And that's something that you'll see over Toblerone. I talk about how the journey that we've been on over the last couple of years has got us to this position now. But actually now we're just going to build and build from this point in time. So not only are we looking in terms of how we engage around key events and occasions, which traditionally you would have seen Toblerone play in Valentine's Day, in Father's Day, in those key moments, but thinking about how we're trying to build that equity out as well. And that's a really important thing for us in terms of building out those long-term memory structures, as well as those short-term activations that we're going to rely on. And also, as I talk about it, in terms of what does that innovation look like? So as I said, we need to continuously review. Does our portfolio, does everything that we ladder up to equate to the platform that we're trying to land and the consumer that we're trying to talk to? And for those that have noticed the cues, actually you can see that we're not actually just going to be a triangle as well. We're playing in a diamond shape with the truffle as well, and we're trying to introduce the stretch of what that means from a DNA and a brand perspective. So there's lots more to come. It's a really, really exciting journey for us to be on. But again, I think I've sat in many marketing presentations, and it's been some great work, some fantastic stuff. Actually, having been in Cannes a couple of weeks ago, you see some fantastic advertising. But the key thing that we always need to stress as well is this delivering positive business outcomes. And that's what we're responsible for, so that we can create a sustainable P&L to keep reinvesting back into the brand. And the amazing thing is whilst there's some incredible work that we're very proud of from a brand perspective, what we're delivering as well from a commercial perspective is absolutely the pinnacle of what we should be striving for. And if I look at the sort of the short-term horizon, we're at 70% growth net revenue year to date, which is truly staggering when you think about the challenges that are existing in the marketplace. The challenge around volume as you look at legislation or pricing elasticity. And the other thing as well is look at moving that dial on that saliency metric. We moved that 6pp forward, just with some of the small communications that we've done over time. And that's equated to penetration growth and share growth as well. And so that's the other thing as well, is make sure you're clear on what you're trying to achieve. Keep that single-minded in terms of what you're trying to do from a brand point of view, but always play that back to the positive business outcomes that we should be rightfully judged on as brand custodians, and ultimately how we can continue to invest back into these brands. So that's it really. I think I did one of the conversations I had in terms of like how I was going to frame this talk was that none of what I've just said is groundbreaking. I don't think any of you are going to walk away from this session going, I saw this oracle talk about Toblerone in terms of the future of marketing. But I'm actually okay with that. I'm actually like, there's a lot of new things and we need to adapt. We need to embrace new technologies that we'll talk about. I think I've already had 20 conversations about the future of AI just in the last 2 hours. And I'm sure we're all very familiar with those sort of things. But what will keep us through the test of time is staying true to your brand, adapting, but delivering against those fundamental questions that we will always have to answer as marketeers. And that's it for me. I do have time for questions. Is there?
Yeah, you have a minute or so. Yes. Does anyone have a question for David? Cool. Here we go.
Hi, I am Lizzie.
I can't. Can you relay?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Got you.
Okay. I'm Lizzie. Lovely to meet
Hey.
you. I work at the number 7 beauty company in our e-com side of the business. I'd really love to know more about how DTC has played a role in the reinvention, and particularly in that premium gifting space.
Yeah, it's a great question. and one not without its challenges actually as well. I think D2C is a space that, as brands, I think feels like quite a natural place that we want to play in. And if you think about the benefit, as I look at D2C, is not only a revenue driver, but in terms of that ability to have those one-on-one relationships with consumers. And if you think about then the benefits as a consequence, a collection of data and the value that can be associated with that. So it's been a really critical thing for us in terms of building in. But as anyone that's involved in a D2C business, is there are certain challenges, and you need to see this in terms of the role it can play for you as a brand in terms of underlining those credentials that you're trying to establish. And actually it'll take time in terms of getting to a profitable revenue growth over time. So it's one that we've had to sort of be very, very patient on. And there have been times actually where when things don't go your way, it's very easy to go, no, we shouldn't do this. This is a distraction. But actually see it as playing a vital part for us as a brand in terms of where we want to go. And whilst the benefit you might not see in the here and now, I think that's a lot of the great work that we do from a marketing perspective, is it plays out in the longer term. So very much seeing in terms of that future environment and what that will give us in richness and consumer conversations. But equally, I think it's where consumers also expect us to be as well. And that's the other thing that we need to be is whether that's in store, in physical retail, but also in a digital environment as well. We need to be in those spaces. Otherwise, we become, to an extent, obsolete and irrelevant in those conversations. Is that okay?
David, thank you very, very much.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.